Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Bree. I've had a pretty busy week this week. I finished off one piece, got most of the way through another one, and I've picked up yet another one. Let me show you what I've got. It's a buffet, 1930s kind of look about it, but I can't find any information about the maker, so I'm going to treat it like vintage instead of antique, though it's probably, I don't know, maybe 85 years old at the outside. Anyway, so the piece that I'm looking at today is this one. So picked that up off Facebook Marketplace for 30 bucks. Yeah, $30 I think. And did her up. Was going to try and keep it all timber, but didn't quite work out that way. So if you're ready to join me on the journey, let's get going. So this is the piece how I got it off of Facebook Marketplace. It's a 1950s-ish. Broken drawers. The handles are just tarnished beyond belief. And as you can see, one of the handles there is fallen and digging a big hole in the front, so that had to be fixed. So the first thing to do was to get the handles off, which was a little bit more of a problem than I thought it would be. Then they got a bath in vinegar and got flung onto the stovetop for around about an hour. So next thing to do was to remove all of the drawers and fix them as we were going along. So we glued together the one at the top that had a piece completely torn off, and also glued together and clamped one of the drawers further down that was just split. This is just all of the residue from boiling the hardware. It was all pretty disgusting. I didn't get any footage of cleaning the hardware, but as you can see, they came up amazingly well. The three on the right have had their vinegar bath. The three on the left have been further polished, but the one on the bottom had only been cleaned more with detergent and salt, whereas the two at the top had been polished with some fine grade steel wool as well. They came up absolutely beautiful. The next thing I did was to clean everything very thoroughly with a solution of sugar soap and water, and then rinse them all with just plain water. Please don't shout at me for using the hose here. If it was anything but 100% solid timber, I definitely wouldn't. And the weather at the moment here is very warm and very windy, so I knew these would dry really, really quickly. Being very closely monitored by my quality assurance manager, I then grabbed my pliers and yanked a staple out from the top of the desk. Then it was time to strip the top of the desk. I ended up stripping the entire thing, but this is just at the top to begin with. Just used a normal commercial stripper and let it do its thing. I always like to describe how the stripper works on my pieces. This time around, it looked like enormous blood clots were coming off of the top of the thing, but as you can see, it took it off really nicely. I'd like to thank Kim Villanueva, who popped over to my Buy Me a Coffee page and bought me a few coffees. Over on the page there, I'm saving up to buy myself a table saw. So if you're enjoying the content and you'd like to help me to produce even better videos, feel free to drop by. The links for the Buy Me a Coffee page are in the description, and a big upfront thank you. So then I wipe the top down with mineral spirits to get rid of the last bits of stripper and to have a look at what we were left with after the stripper had done its job. So one of the things that we were left with was a lovely big A scratched into the top of the dresser, so I decided to try something I haven't done before. I used the ironing method with a wet towel or damp towel and a hot iron over the spot to see if we could raise the fibres in the wood and get rid of that A a little bit. While the ironing seemed to raise the fibres a little bit, it really wasn't that much. Of course, that could be because I was a little bit impatient. I don't write like I would be impatient. Yeah, but it worked a little bit, but not as well as I thought it would. The next task was to sand the top down. I used my 120 grit on my orbital sander and just took that surface down. I just wasn't that happy with how the surface had turned out, so I decided to try bleaching the timber. Just using household bleach to do this. I did the top of the dresser and also the fronts of the drawers. I still wasn't really happy with the surface. The bleaching worked really well. I mean, it got bleached, but the surface was still really patchy, so I got another sand, and then I went on to fill all the little gaps and things that I could see on the surface. And this is just filling the little ding from where the handle was hanging down and digging in. I did a little bit of contemplative hand sanding here. I discovered that there were some really bad problems with the legs, so I was trying to decide whether I was going to keep it timber or end up painting it, and I decided that I really needed to paint the frame because I couldn't save the legs without them being very obviously repaired. So then I moved on and put a coat of wood conditioner on all of the surfaces that were going to stay timber. That wood conditioner, I make it myself. It's just half varnish and half mineral spirits. And because I've decided to paint, I had to tape off the places where I didn't want the paint to be. While I would have preferred not to have to paint this one, this Malta Blue in the Dulux Chalk Effects range is my absolute favourite. It is so beautiful, it goes on so smoothly, and the colour is so luxe. I love it to pieces.
A bit worried?
Applying the paint in kind of dabbing motion rather than in long strokes seemed to get it to stick a little bit better. So that's what it did. Except along the top here, because I was trying not to get paint on the underside of the lid. Then I went ahead and stained the drawer fronts and the top of the unit. I also painted in where the dovetail joins were because I wanted to highlight them, and though it looks really rough when I do it here, it actually turns out looking really good. I'm using Cabot stain in just Walnut, and I used 2 coats of it. The insides of the top 2 drawers were still pretty dodgy, so I decided to take them off and turn them upside down because the bottoms of the drawers weren't as dodgy. So that was a matter of removing the nails from the back, sliding the piece out, sanding them down, and then putting them back in. Also, while the back was off, it was a really good opportunity to get in, give the inside of the drawers a really good sand as well. So I took that opportunity with both hands and sanded away. So I applied a coating of linseed oil and mineral spirits mixed together to all of the surfaces that weren't going to be either painted or varnished. I mean, we're looking at like 70-year-old timber here, so it was well ready for a drink, and lapped it right up. Don't know about you, but I really like watching the linseed oil soak into the timber, especially in fast motion. And then I waxed all of the chalk paint areas. I used beeswax, or a beeswax from Bunnings, and it's really difficult to work. If you're going to use wax, I would suggest that you go back to the Dixie Belle, get the Big Mum's Botter. It's fantastic stuff. I applied 2 coats of varnish to the fronts of the drawers and 4 coats to the top of the unit. In this sequence the colors look really different, and we are pretty sure that's because the fronts of the drawers were radiata pine, whereas the top is cypress pine, which has a much finer grain, and yeah, it was quite noticeable. I love applying my poly with a sponge. I don't think I'll ever go back to using a brush, but you need to be careful not to overwork your surface, because my first coat I went back over it in bits and pieces and made a little bit of a mess that I then had to clean up. I decided to try to use the original posts and nuts from the hardware for the drawers. And some of them were rusted in place, so I had to get out the WD-40 and also the Dremel. Well, I don't have a Dremel, I've got a cheaper version, but same thing as a Dremel with a steel brush on it to loosen them off. And once the steel brush and WD-40 had done its job, they came off fairly easily. I think I didn't manage to salvage 2 of them, so I did have to use some new stuff. I'm finally on the final leg, putting the drawers back in, and then the only thing left is to reattach the hardware, but not before it gets a spray of gloss varnish to make sure that it doesn't tarnish too quickly. And with that, here's a look at the original piece before the big reveal. Thanks so much for watching today. I had a great time doing this unit, and I hope you've enjoyed watching me do it. If you've enjoyed the content, feel free to like the video, comment on it, and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in watching more. In the next few weeks I'll be doing an IKEA dresser as part of the IKEA dresser challenge, which is being run by Cynthia over at Furniture Flipping for Profit. So keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, we will see you next time. See ya.